All right, welcome back. So today I'm going to be sharing with you a unexpected and unplanned mushroom trip that I had. I ate what I thought would be 0.5 to 1 gram. It ended up feeling like 3 to 4, maybe 5 grams. And this was a tiny little piece of a chocolate that I ate. And so I really had no idea of knowing how much was going to be in it. It didn't really hit me until I got home, which was midnight, and the trip only lasted about 2.5 to 3 hours. So when I got in bed, it's midnight, my room's pitch black, I've got blackout curtains, lights are off. I'm basically just attempting to get rested and in that mode of like, I want to go to sleep. But the mushrooms, once they're in your system, you better strap in because there's no preventing what's going to come. But the best thing that I've found, which is what I did that night, was to accept that I have no control over where this is going to go. The best thing I can do is sort of put on those like curiosity goggles. So the first hour was uncomfortable. And again, I have plenty of experience doing these medicines in a therapeutic context. And so I'm not going to say that it's the same as doing it with a guide, even for me, but it's also nowhere near the same as it would be for somebody that doesn't have an experience with these medicines to do it on their own. So I'm not recommending doing this on your own. This is just me sharing my experience. That being said, that first hour and a half that was uncomfortable for me was manageable. And I had an understanding of where all of these thoughts were coming from. And so what do I mean by uncomfortable? I was seeing violent images in my head and having violent thoughts, not necessarily violence against anyone or even against myself, just like almost like if you Google just violent stuff. And violence can also just be things that are maybe a little bit disturbing, like needles and like insects and just like that's kind of what I mean. And then quickly it did turn into violence against myself. But when I say that, I want to make sure that I'm clear that it wasn't like a suicidal thoughts. It was just, you can frame it that way if you'd like, but the way that I framed it and the way that I was perceiving it in that moment was that I was experiencing a lot of self-hatred come up, right? And how the hell did I frame it this way during the experience? I'm reading a book by Richard Schwartz called No Bad Parts. And there's a scene in that book where the author is having a conversation with one of his clients, and his client is suicidal. And so Richard isolates the part of his client that is presenting that narrative of the suicide, and he asks him, why do you want for him to kill himself, right? Why do you want that? What is your goal? What is your motive? And for context, this whole book is about internal family systems, which is it's not something I can explain in just 1 second. So Google that if you don't know what it is. But so he asks this part of him, what's your goal? And then as he has a conversation with this part of his client, it turns out that the suicidal thought is originating from a part that just wants to, punish his client and sort of bring about such drastic measures that he won't be able to ignore whatever it is that is bothering that part anymore. So to kind of ground it in my experience, and maybe this will help make a little bit more sense, is as I started to experience this violence and these just uncomfortable physical sensations and sort of a desire to get away or get out of my own skin, I had a conversation in my head with that part of me, and I was asking it, why are you presenting it to me? What's the message? It's not clear to me. What is the message that you want me to receive from these images and these sensations? And basically, it was, I'm tired of the way that you've been doing things, and I'm tired of how much you've been ignoring me, right? That part of me was feeling ignored, both in, me not ever bringing it into my awareness and my conscious awareness, and also in my behaviors for the last month or maybe two. And so once I had that interaction with it, it didn't go fully away, but I just was able to reframe it, right? And not lose myself in the fear of what if I act on these images, right? Because that's always been my fear anytime I do psychedelics, more in the past than in the last year or two. But this was more when I was like, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know they were used for therapy and all that. When I was younger, I was afraid that if I took a psychedelic, it could make me do something to myself that I wouldn't do if I was in a quote unquote normal state of consciousness. And so once I had that interaction, I just kind of calmed down a little bit, and then it was like all of the messages that it wanted me to hear, I was able to listen to. And it was a lot, man. It was a lot, and that's why I'm making this video, is because it wasn't just, you know, an interesting trip and all the times before that I've done psychedelics without a guide, sure, they've been impactful, and sure, there have been little nuggets here and there of wisdom, but for the most part, they've just been a waste. And this wasn't that, you know, for whatever reason, I was just in the right mindset, in the right moment in my life to hear this, and it was short enough and just intense enough that I could actually go there, even though there wasn't anybody around to guide or protect me. So the first lesson was just this visual of my routine, right? Where I wake up, I meditate, and then I work from home. So I'm on the computer about 7 hours a day. And even though I'm working on a lot of projects that I'm really excited about and really interested in, for the last month or month and a half of my life, without noticing, I had sort of jumped straight back into a pattern of mine of just overworking and this workaholic habit that I have of like telling myself that life is amazing and everything is awesome because I am so stimulated by what I'm doing on my computer or recording these videos, and not realizing that in a way that is its own cage, its own trap, right? And I even, you know, this part I'm still processing because I don't know how much of it was true and how much of it was, you know, fear-based. But I even had this moment where I was like, man, what if the reason that I haven't been as successful, quote unquote, as I would like to be with my writing or with my podcast or my YouTube videos, what if deep down I don't actually want that amount of attention, right? And it was like, why, you know, I see all of these channels getting banned and all of these sort of negative energy being directed at people that have large audiences. And there was just a part of me that was like, whoa, I'm not sure that that's somewhere I want to be. And so I just had this whole sort of encounter with my goals and my mission and the things that I'm working on, where I had to really sit and inspect, you know, is this something I want? What does achieving that actually look and feel like? But the thing I took away from that was just that it was like I was lifted out of my routine, like I was watching a movie of the last month and a half of my life. And all of a sudden I was like, whoa, this is not the movie that I thought I was watching. Like I saw the damage that I was doing to myself. And this was in more than just, you know, the workaholic. The workaholic extends to, you know, pretty much anything I do in my life, I can do in a workaholic way. And so two more of those things were, you know, Goodreads. The website for people that read, the Goodreads reading challenge of the year. All of a sudden, I was just in my bed on mushrooms, and I was like, hey man, do you realize that having that challenge, participating in that challenge, it's a lose-lose? Because I'm feeling the pressure. If I'm ahead of my challenge, right, if I've read 4 books ahead, then I feel the pressure of, oh, well, I need to stay ahead of schedule. And if I'm behind schedule, then I'm just like, fuck, man, I need to read more so that I can catch up. Catch up to what? To this illusion that, you know, my challenge was to read 39 books in 2022. It's like, and if I read 38, what does that mean? What if I read 42? And so it's just this whole like maze that I built for myself where I was like, this actually doesn't make any sense. I'm going to stop participating in this and just read. I've done it. I'm not doing it anymore. And it makes so much sense after I was shown the reality of what I was doing. It's this idea that I need pressure in order to do something. And it's so ingrained in me unconsciously that for a long time I was like, man, this Goodreads thing has been working. I've been reading more books every year and it's awesome and it feels great, right? It's like, not really, man. You could be doing the exact same thing without having that pressure. And the second part of that was Twitter. The last 5 to 6 months, it's felt important to me to stay up to date with Twitter. It's almost like what the old belief about the newspaper. It's like, well, what people used to tell me, I've got to be reading the news or else I'm not gonna know the next time that something that might affect me is happening. And so, the Canadian protests happened where people got their bank accounts frozen, and then the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, and the Russians getting all their shit locked, right? All this conflict and all this stuff where I still believe it's very important for me to be prepared for whatever is going to come. But I had not realized that I was operating, maybe some people can do what I was doing and still maintain a level of harmony and inner peace. I had given that up in pursuit of safety from the future and sacrificed it for a state of fear. Again, not because these things aren't actually going to happen or are happening, but because I was consuming it so much. Right? Like I have cryptocurrency and I have it on the exchange. I had it on the exchange. And then I saw people on Twitter that are crypto experts saying, get your crypto off of the exchange right now. And I was like, fuck, I don't know how to do that. And so for the next week, I was researching how to do that and then looking up different ledgers and different things that I could get. At the same time, continuing to read similar or the same exact thing of like, get your money off the exchange right now. Here's more evidence as to why. It's like, okay, once I've got the one little nugget, I can just be like, all right, I need to take it off the exchange. Let me do that. I don't need to continue to aggravate myself. And that was what I was doing. And so, I don't know how long this will last, but while I was on the mushrooms, I wrote down, stop using Twitter now. Let's just start with that. Let's just start with that and see where that goes. And it's been, 5-6 days that I've not been on it. And I have to say, I do feel a little bit more peace. The next lesson was just that, I had started to judge what I didn't want to see in myself in others. I was looking at friends of mine that are perhaps, truly less prepared for potential disasters than I am, but I'm still very unprepared. And so rather than acknowledging that and just dealing with that, I had started to, get upset at the people who weren't even starting and who didn't even believe any of this could happen or was happening or is happening. And so again, it's not that it wasn't true about other people, but it was like, why was I focusing on that so much instead of just slowly building up to whatever it is that I'm trying to get to? And I can recenter and sort of come back to myself and come back to the things that matter to me right now. Because again, it's easier to get upset at somebody that has the same goal I have for not trying to achieve that goal than it is to be honest with myself about, have I achieved it or am I still in process of achieving it? Those things that matter to me right now, which again, I wasn't, fully ignoring. And a lot of this I am working on, but it just, I had added things that weren't conducive to my goals without realizing that they were pulling me away from my goals. The most poignant example of this is my relationship with my dad, who at the moment of this taping has brain cancer. And I had told myself that I was going to go visit him during his treatment, 6-week treatment. And then all of a sudden, I made excuses. And then also spoke to my dad and sort of, I kept asking him like, hey, do you still want me to go? Or like, is it, when can I go? And just like, I'm not a 26-year-old grown man that can make that decision for myself. And so finally he told me like, yeah, maybe it's better if you just wait and you come when we're back home after the treatment. And so again, I'm on my bed and on mushrooms, and it just hits me, man, like, what the fuck are you doing? Your dad is dying. He's not going to die. He is dying. This is finite time that you have with him. And you say that you don't have enough money to go see him, but you have enough money to buy a standing chest freezer and an extra box of meat to put in that chest freezer in case there's no meat at the grocery store. But you don't have enough money to go visit your dad, your dying dad. And it was paired with the workaholic dynamic that I had fallen back into, right? It was like, I am so afraid of my dad passing away that I'm just going to create this reality for myself where that's not a part of it, right? That's not a part of it. Yes, I'm crying every 2 or 3 days thinking about my dad, but for the most part, I wake up and I'm happy and I'm doing my creative stuff, and then I'm doing saunas and cold plunge and all these things. It's like, man, underneath all of that, what I didn't see was how driven my behavior was by the situation with my dad. And that's when, the last hour maybe of the trip, I was just like, oh, I know what's coming now. What's coming is what I've been holding on to. The illusion that my dad isn't dying. But the reality is that, however long he has, my dad is dying, and that is just crushing. And so for that last 30, 45 minutes, I was just weeping. And here's the beautiful thing about this is that as soon as I released that grief and that sadness in that moment, the discomfort of the trip disappeared. And not only that, 25, 30 minutes later, I was actually tired and then I fell asleep. It showed me in a very condensed time how if I don't let this grief out, I will create a miserable life around it to avoid feeling it. But as soon as I feel that, man, I come back to peace and I realize, emotions are just emotions, and if I feel them, they diminish in potency, and then they're replaced with peace and self-love. Holy shit. And the important part is that I didn't just have this experience. The very next day, I was like, fuck Goodreads, fuck Twitter, bought a plane ticket to go see my dad, and then just have come back to, doing less. Right? And again, I don't have to put pressure on myself to accomplish my goals. And I've been maybe I'm going to listen to a sad album and just see if I have any sadness that wants to come up. Or maybe I'm going to sit in my room, sit on the floor and write some poems, or just sit outside, just remove the self-imposed deadlines. They only add pressure. So I hope that this video helps or touches you in some way. If you have any questions, if there's anything you're dealing with or struggling with that maybe I can offer some of my own experience with, leave a comment below. Maybe that could be my next video. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.